Today in the Dadbod workshop we are going to change the reservoir for the brakes for Bert, our 1979 Fiat X19 Series 1.5. When we recently rebuilt the calipers and installed them, when we went to bleed the brakes, the reservoir here started to leak. Let's get started. First things first, we need to take off this cover. It's 4 Phillips head screws, 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one comes in this way. There's a gap in the trim here which allows you to get to the Phillips head screw. Yeah. That now gives us access to the bracket which goes around the reservoir. It's a 10mm bolt on each side. As I'm looking at it, on the left hand side here, I just use a long socket. Just a long socket. There's not much room to move in here, so it takes a bit to get this out. As I'm looking at it on the right hand side, there's a room to get an extension bar in, so we use that. That just allows us to move the bottle out of the way a little bit to get the bracket off totally. And that's the bracket, just sits in here like that. There's 2 hoses here which come out of the bottom of the reservoir and go into copper pipes which take it through to the master cylinder. We're going to clamp those hoses off so that we can reduce the amount of air that gets into the system. Next step is to empty the reservoir, so we'll suck the brake fluid out of that. Okay, now the brake fluid's out of the reservoir, we can get in underneath it and undo the hoses. Nice big rag there to soak up any excess brake fluid so it doesn't just go all through the car. The second hose. And that's the old reservoir. I'll show you some pictures here so you can see what I've got here and what I've been working on. These pipes here, which were only replaced recently, like a few weeks ago, will now run into the bottom of the new reservoir here. The next step is to put the hose on these 2 connectors at the bottom of the new reservoir. I've just got the top on so nothing falls in there and contaminates the brake fluid when we put it back in. And these hoses are 5/16, which is just under 8mm. So it's a pretty standard size. We'll just clamp those hoses back up. Okay, the hoses are reconnected. What I'll do next is put a little bit of brake fluid into there and just make sure that it's holding. Okay, just let that sit there. What we'll do now is take the clamps off so the fluid can run down into the hoses and any bubbles can come back up through the hose. I'm just squeezing those hoses now because as they suck in the new fluid, they're also getting rid of the bubbles. What we'll do is just pump the brakes a few times just to make sure that there's no leakage. Okay, we've massaged the bracket a bit and it's actually held it in really nicely, so that's great. This is the end product. So the bracket's going around here, back onto the original bolts, and the hoses are back into the copper pipes going down to the master cylinder. Once we've topped it up and closed it up, we put this bit of trim back in to cover it all up. One thing we'll need to have a look at is, this is the previous cap, and it's got wires which go down to the dashboard for warning lights. That doesn't fit into the new one. The new one's got a cover and a connector, so we'll just have to rewire that into the dashboard. It's got a harness, so it shouldn't be too difficult.